Hello, and welcome again to the weekly chat known as Just Two Dads. I am your co-host, Sean Francis, and I am joined, as always, by my partner in Thrive, good friend and business partner, Mr. Brian Altunian. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm good, bud. Feeling good.
Good. I am, as always, glad, thankful, and blessed to be here today. We have a great show in store for you, Brian. And I always say that each week we feel that it's so redundant. I always wonder what it feels like from the outside looking in when we say, oh my gosh, our guest today is going to be fantastic. This is going to be just such a great show. But there's always more reason than ever each time to say that. And I really am thrilled about our guest that we have today. And we shall get right into it in just a minute. But Brian, you said you're good. How otherwise? What's going on? What's going on in your wonderful life?
First of all, when your microphone was down, you actually sounded pretty good. So you can leave it like, hey, let it hang down.
That.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so much better. It's incredible.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. We'll just leave it like that.
That's kind of a description of how the week has gone, right? Where technology is like ruling our lives, and yet I feel like I have no control over certain things. But I'm good, and I'm excited for today's show, and I think it's gonna be great. And we're now on doing Facebook Live, and for our friends and visitors, you want to keep going, Sean, or you want me to launch into an intro here?
You can do that. I'll just do one last thing and say hello to everyone on WSTX AM on St. Croix, United States Virgin Islands. And welcome. And you go ahead and take it away.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So we have some regular listeners, Aimee, folks who join us. Robert Moorhead is one of them, and I see him on today, and there are other folks that contribute quite a bit. So you'll be able to see comments here as we're having the conversation. But now for people to know, Just Two Dads was a conversation that Sean and I were having on a fairly regular basis about in the area surrounding special needs children, special needs families, the special needs community. And that conversation turned into we were meeting phenomenal warriors, people who were doing things, taking their circumstances and actually applying it to their community and changing the world. And everything that impacts the special needs community, while it seems somewhat intense for those families going through some special needs issues, the work that they the challenges that they come up against actually transcend the special needs community and actually apply to all. So we're thrilled to have been able to create a platform where people can listen, watch, join us, and now we're on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Say that 3 times. We're on Spotify and Pandora and any place else that you can listen to podcasts. And now we have our own YouTube channel. We have our own Facebook page, obviously Just Two Dads, that we're doing this live, and we're open to wherever you think that we need to be. Please let us know. Contribute, share with your friends, and we love doing this because it furthers our life. I call this a life affirming activity, and today's conversation is going to be that for so many people. Our guest today is Aimee Ibarra, and Aimee and I have known each other in the work that we do, that Sean and I do. Aimee and I first met, and it was at a time that Aimee was beginning a transformational journey, and that transformational journey has led her to not only have an impact on her family and her own personal life, but on communities. Not just in the community of Southern California. And in fact, Aimee is joining us today. She is in Bali, and it is 6 o'clock in the morning in Bali. Aimee, is it 6 o'clock in the morning for you now?
6:05 in beautiful
6:05. So it is really, really amazing. And and so for those folks who are in the U.S. Virgin Islands at WSTX, hearing us on WSTX AM radio, so we have an Islander now. Aimee is going to be changed. She can talk about her child. She's going to become a part Islander. And so there's going to be a lot of relatedness. So I'm excited that you're here, Sean. I love that. I love we're trying some new stuff, and thanks for playing with me. And as always, my friend, it's a good thing to be going through this exercise, this experience with you.
Likewise.
So let's jump into it with Aimee. Aimee, so for those of you who are just seeing you for the first time, and again, for those who can see us live, if you're listening to us on a podcast, please jump onto a YouTube channel at some point and watch this episode, because and we were having the conversation with Sean Hall, who's our producer in Hawaii at the moment, by the way. And Sean Hall said, oh my God, the energy that just comes from Aimee's picture alone, like she just exudes this, there's just a sense of, of blessing and shine and amazing. So you have this infectious energy about you. So, but I know that that's not where it's always been for you. So talk to us about the transformation. I want people to understand and hear it from you, what you went through, what you've been going through over the last couple of years to have you be where you are now in Bali.
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you guys for allowing me this opportunity to join you guys. And let me just tell you how great I think it is that the two of you are creating this space and this platform for the special needs community. And then it sounds like it goes beyond that as well. So well done on that. And especially just two dads, right? Loving that we're hearing from the male energy in these conversations. And something that you said, Brian, that I want to acknowledge before I start to introduce myself. You said something along the lines of, you're talking about special needs families. It's whatever challenges we go through in life. I think what's so beautiful is then when we can take those challenges and transform them into something greater than just simply a challenge by sharing with others around us what we learn from going through those challenges, and supporting other people who are maybe experiencing like sorts of experiences in their own life. That's the whole point, this shared humanity, this shared experience that we're all going through. It can look different to different people, but the connection, the human connection, and how we can really experience purpose and fulfillment in life by taking everything that we've gone through and then showing up in the world to help other people who are going through it too. So well done. And that's definitely been a big part of my story. So I don't know how far back we want to go, like, way back in 1970 something.
Go back, because there are our childhood and our time, between that childhood and our adolescence always play a role in painting the picture that we're a part of. So feel free to do that.
Beautiful, yes. Beautiful. And my story definitely does begin there. So I won't tell you what year I was born. I was born in Northern California. And really what shaped my childhood is I had my biological father was a very loving, central figure in my life. My parents were already divorced. I think actually they were at least separated before I was conceived. So I didn't ever live in the same home with my mom and dad. So my memories of my dad was going, spending time with him on the weekends and things like that. But my fondest childhood memories were with him, because when I was with him, I felt seen, I felt protected, I felt loved. That's where I first got my first glimpse of my intrinsic worth. I didn't have to do anything to earn his attention or earn his love or protection. He just gave it to me freely because I was his daughter. On the other hand, I had a stepfather, and I'll just share from the way it is without judgment or blame. We're all showing up in the world doing our best. But I had a stepfather who was not able to provide those things for me. And it became the actual opposite. He was verbally and physically abusive. So safety was not something I ever experienced with him. Intrinsic worth, no. The message I got with him was more about that I was fundamentally flawed, and I had to hustle for my worthiness, if we're going to use Brene Brown's term. So my father was tragically murdered when I was 5 years old, and that was very traumatic for me. And that whole experience really, that coupled with having an abusive stepfather and a mother who was emotionally not available, negligent on her own. Again, it is what it is. I'm a mom. I hope for grace and forgiveness from my children one day. And I have certainly done that to my parents, but that's where my story began, because that childhood trauma that I was ill-suited to process led to eating disorders. So at a very young age, food became my best friend. It became the way I self-soothed. It became the way I disengaged and numbed from the trauma I was experiencing, and didn't know what to do with it, and how to not have to feel those very painful, difficult emotions. So my first binge was, and I can laugh about it now, was as probably age 10. By age 10, we had moved. We were no longer in California. We were living in Utah. And we were in a neighborhood of what was called newly deads and newlyweds. No, excuse me, nearly deads and newlyweds. So very elderly people and very young people with having children. And we were the exception, where we were kind of a middle-aged family. And I, at the young age of 10, I would never do this now. I can't believe it. But back then, I got hired out as the babysitter to all the neighborhood families. Sorry, here in Bali, it's very balmy and it's all Celsius. So I'm trying to regulate my either freezing or I'm getting like all glistening.
Aimee, was that term the term? What did you, newlywed and nearly dead? Did you actually hear that term at that age when you lived there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Our neighborhood was, that's the way it was described. Yeah, I didn't make it up.
You know, we used to call Glendale, California, exactly that: nearly dead, nearly dead, and newlywed. Yeah, for a period of time. It's a gentrification, right, where the older folks are moving out, the younger families are moving in.
Wow. Well, the older folks are dying.
Yeah, right. Moving out. I was trying to be nice and moving on. Moving on. Really, is what
yeah, moving on. There you go. So, also something in my family, food became everything other than just fuel for the body. It became a way of control. And my mom, like all women of her generation, I have come to discover as now I work with women, the women of my mom's generation, they were obsessed with dieting, even more so than now. Their body size and appearance and shape directly communicated their worth and their value in the world. So show me a woman pre-1960s that was not obsessed with the new and latest diet. And that was my mom as well. So there was a time where Cheerios wasn't even allowed. Cheerios was junk food. Like we were living off of like homemade wheat bread and raw organic milk from a dairy and like a little bit of fruits and vegetables. So food was not in an abundance. There was a scarcity of it. What if a treat came home? It was like a little treat. Everybody kind of got a bite and then that was it, right? So it was like, hurry, yours, right? So there's a real scarcity mindset around food. And then it became a controlling thing. So she would hide snacks and treats in her room and hoard them for herself. And then as children, we would like go in there and find her stashes. And it was such a sense of betrayal that here she was having these foods that we were told were evil and bad. She had them hiding in her room. And it was like, what?
Wow.
Right? So I grew up with very disordered eating relationship. And again, so when I would go babysit, that's when then I could binge. That's where the Wonder Bread was. That's where the macaroni and cheese was. That's where the Rice Krispies, that's where the chips, the cookies, like all of it that we didn't have in our house, they had in abundance. And so when the children would go to bed, it was like, right. Yeah. And I would binge to the point that I would experience what's called a food coma, like where you zone out. And it feels amazing, just like getting drunk or getting high in the short term, because there's that release of the pain and that you get that dopamine hit. But then when it wears off, you're faced with the pain of your reality all over again. And then you also then have the shame and the self-blame over, well, shit, why'd you do that? You're so horrible. You have no self-control. Like, how embarrassing. So this one binge, I'm in a full-on binge. The kids are in bed. And so what that looks like is like every box of cereals out on the counter open, right? Like there's Kraft macaroni and cheese cooking on the stove. I've already had 2 peanut butter and jelly white bread sandwiches. Like it, but the evidence is all out there in the kitchen. And the parents came home, and I was mortified. I was mortified because as a compulsive overeater, we're always trying to find ways to hide the evidence, hide the shame. We would never want to be caught in a binge, right? It would be like being caught in a drug bust or something. So That stayed with me. I didn't have a weight challenge because I was very active. I was played sports. I hiked. I mountain biked. So I never had a weight challenge growing up. But once I hit about 16 or 17, knowing I couldn't stop binging, it was something beyond me. I didn't know how to stop it. It was an obsessive sort of out of control sort of experience. And then, of course, I'm becoming more self-conscious of my body image and boys and dating and that sort of thing. And so the only solution seemed to be throwing up, inducing vomit. So dabbled with bulimia for a few years in my late teens and early 20s. Went on, I got pregnant at 19. The father of my child was not interested in being a father. Like, again, no judgment or shame. He was only 21. And I chose to keep my baby, which I'm so grateful for. She just turned 30 and so grateful for her. But then I needed to provide a life for her. She deserved a mom and a dad and stability and a family. And I was this young college student living off of my trust fund from my dad. And so it really just became about finding her a good dad. And soon after she was born, I met my ex-husband, and he provided that stability. And he was older than me. He was about 8 years older than me. He was ready to get married and have a family. And he definitely was able to bring stability and presence to, my daughter's life. So there was a period of time where I wasn't binging during that time of having a baby and getting married. But by the time child number 2 came along, we were experiencing just the challenges of life of being very young, married, babies on the way, financial challenges, and the binging came back. And I spent the next 20 something years with very disordered eating, and the weight did begin to come on as I was having more children and not being able to maintain a level of activity. And because of the way I grew up, codependence was the name of the game for me with relationships with men. I was constant, and it was no different in my relationship in my marriage. Coming from that place of feeling I was flawed, I was worthless, I had to hustle for my worthiness, I had to earn people's love. I spent 25 years really doing that, taking care of everybody else around me, even to a level of expectation that those people that themselves did not have, but in that effort to feel seen and heard and validated and loved, and neglected my own well-being. And it resulted at age 47. I was 90 pounds heavier than I am today. I was on antidepressants. I was on my way to full-fledged diabetes, extreme fatigue, brain fog, so on and so forth. The way I just put it succinctly is I was bankrupt, mind, body, and spirit by the time I was 40.
Wow. And so without dating yourself, how long ago was that?
I own it now. I actually am really proud to tell people how old I am because I own it. So I will be 50 in August.
Amazing. For those who cannot see her, when she tells you she's 50, you look like you're in your 20s. Honestly, you look absolutely incredible. So 3 years ago, so there's something that occurred, right? So something happened that had you make a decision to do that. 90 pounds. And how long of a period of time did it take to lose that? How long did
1 year.
90 pounds in a year. That's for anybody listening, think about that, right? Yeah. Just you're going to say, that's not an easy task, right? So you have to have conviction, you have to have belief, you have to have a why. There's a whole bunch of things that lead up to being on a transformational mission that has you lose 90 pounds in a year. So can you talk about that? I mean, I don't know how you feel about, we're getting personal about certain stuff, but how do you feel about the lead up to that? Because I think people would relate to that, right?
Yeah, the lead up to that year, it was 2018 when I actually started my weight loss journey, and I did to be totally accurate, it was 87 pounds in a year, and then the next year it took a couple months to get that last three. So just like for total disclosure, really it started interestingly enough in 2015. That's when I was first really introduced to personal development. And the one person that impacted my life the most was someone named Ed Milet, which I know you both are very familiar with. My first, I would say, coach or mentor, she handed me a CD back then. This was before he had a podcast, and you can find him all over the place. She handed me a CD of his that had a series of talks. And I drove that CD in my car and I would listen to it over and over and over and over again. And the two things that he taught me that changed everything and really set me on this trajectory that I'm on now. In fact, I have put the intention out. I will be a guest on his podcast one day because I will earn the right to be that guest. And then I can tell him in person how he has completely changed my life. And in my life being changed, all the ripple effect of all the people that have come across my path. And I've had the great pleasure and honor in helping in some way. But the two things that I learned, number one, our thoughts are not real. And our thoughts don't have to control us. We are the boss of our brains. We get to choose the thoughts. That was so are you freaking kidding me? Like the thoughts that are in my mind are not real, aren't true. Like they don't determine and define my reality. I never it was mind blowing. And then the other one was you are the author of your life script. If you don't like the script, rewrite it.
Mind blowing.
Mind blowing. For me in 2015, who very much was living a life script that had been handed me by my family, by my religion, by my ex-husband, the idea that I didn't have to live that life anymore and I could figure out and recreate the life script that I wanted, that I no longer had to follow, that was given me, that was mind blowing. So that began in 2015.
Yeah, so that was and by the way, we love Ed and we have the same goal. Our goal is that we're going to be on Ed's podcast. He's going to be a guest on ours at some point as well. Because it's a mindset shift that occurs, and you realize that a lot of the things that we follow are established for us by our relationship, with in many cases, our religion, our school, our education and whatnot. So we love, I love this story. And so you, once you decided to flip the script, right? Is what we say, flip the script. What happened?
So, I continued on that, heavily immersed in personal development. So of course there were, things along the way, learning to, another one was face your fears and do it anyway. Right. I was someone who and I'm an athlete. That was another thing. That was one of his affirmations is I'm an athlete. And so I did not feel like an athlete. And the other thing he was talking about is being brave and courageous, did not feel that way either. So affirmations became something that became a part of my life, again, introduced by him and other influencers, as a way to, control the thoughts and reprogram our thinking. And so probably by 2016, I was, I probably weighed about 220 pounds. I wasn't at my highest yet, but still 80 pounds heavier than I am today. I began telling myself I'm an athlete. That was one of my affirmations. I did not look like an athlete. I did not behave like an athlete. I did not treat my body in any way, shape, or form that resembled an athlete. And when I'm talking about athlete, I never thought professional athlete, I'm thinking recreational athlete, but I wanted to heal my body physically. It was something that was important to me. And I used to, even though I always had the disordered eating, there was a time when my body was athletic and I wanted to get back to that. So I even put it on a vision board, of me with a healthy body and all the gifts that come with having a body that is strong and healthy, even though nothing in my life resembled it. So there was that. And then I felt very weak internally. And I had a desire to become brave and strong and courageous. I knew intrinsically that it would be important for me and my family at some point for me to become a brave and courageous person. And I wanted to lead out with that. So another affirmation I would say day in and day out, I am brave, I'm courageous, I'm strong. I'm brave, I'm courageous, I'm strong. Every time I went to pick up the phone, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I'm strong. So those were some affirmations that I, would really, again, to help reshape my identity of myself, I guess, or the way I was thinking about things. And then fast forward to 2017, my oldest daughter, was getting married, and I never had a wedding. It was my ex-husband and I at the courthouse, got married. We went out to dinner afterwards, and then he and I went to Tijuana for the weekend. Not even for a whole weekend, because I had a nursing baby back home. It was like a day and a half sort of thing. It just was never really a thing. So my first child, my daughter, and we want to give her, as nice of a wedding as we can, and we wanted to pay cash for it. So I worked harder than I've ever worked that January through April of that year. And my body reflected it, because on the day she got married, I was at my highest, which was 233 pounds, and I just looked exhausted. I was just running from appointment to appointment to appointment. The beautiful thing is we were able to pay cash for her wedding, but when it was over on I think she got married May 27th, I just done. I was exhausted, told my branch manager I need to take the summer off. I've got nothing left. So I stepped away from everything for the summer. The kids were, their school schedule was it was summertime. So they could just go out in the pool and play. And I just needed a break. And as I kind of withdrew from the world, I started asking myself some questions. I was coming up on my 47th birthday, I guess, in August of that year. And I just started doing a lot of real internal inventory of okay, I've lived half my life on this planet. And what do I want to do for the next half? That was really the question. And as I was pondering that question, again, Ed Milet, who, by the way, he's the exact same age as me, and one of your previous guests, Jeff Levitan, he's also the same age as me. And so I would sit there and listen to them, and I would listen to these amazing lives that they had created, wealth, relationship, health. And I'm thinking, oh my holy shit, they're the same exact age as me. And my life is in shambles. The only thing that I had together was my kids. Being a mom to my children, that was that always will be the highlight, the most important thing. But other than that, my life was the shits. And here are these two men, the exact same age as me, and look at the legacies they've already created for their family. And what legacy did I have left for my children? A legacy of depression and codependence and disordered eating and living small. That's not the legacy I wanted to leave for my children. And so to them and do this self-reflection and inventory. And the one thing I heard both of them say, a life of joy and purpose a life of joy and fulfillment has nothing to do with money. And it has everything to do with creating a life of purpose. And that stuck. And that's what I want. I got to figure out what my purpose is and go create a life of purpose. And it will mean rewriting a life script in order to do that. And that's what happened. I'm nope, I lived the first half of my life on this planet according to other people, what they wanted and expected out of me. I'm done with that. I'm going to figure out how to get into the driver's seat and create a life of purpose. I didn't know what my purpose was, again, beyond being a mom at that time. The one thing I did know is I had to get physically in a condition where I could even have the capacity to even think about it. Because at that point, I was sleeping maybe 10 to 12 hours a night and then taking probably a 2-hour nap in the afternoon just so I could get through dinner time.
Amazing.
It was if I could just survive. That's what I was doing.
You mentioned earlier, I want to go back a little bit because I figure maybe it still will reveal itself. But you mentioned when you talked about your parents in particular, you mentioned their challenges from a very accepting, non-judgmental point of view. There are very evolved people or people who are very much evolved otherwise that don't have the capacity to do that. So where did that come from? Because you're talking about, maybe it's as simple as having a choice to be a worrier or a warrior, and blame or solution. But nevertheless, that's not something to take lightly. It's commendable. And if you can tell us where that comes from, because if you look back at where you are, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that's so and so's fault. Where does that come from for you?
Well, it comes from Ed Milet. He taught me that you take 100% responsibility for everything, and not just him. There was other, like Jamie Villalobos. There were other people, but the message was the same. And I first heard it from him. You take 100% responsibility for your life. That's how you empower yourself. If you don't take responsibility for everything happening in your life, you become a victim, and that's a weak position. So you want to blame your parents? And he used to say this too. Not just him, other influencers have said that there are people that have done more with less, right?
For sure.
So look
Sure.
around. There's, the women I work with, many of the women I work with now experience sexual trauma in their childhood. I didn't, right? So there's always someone that has had greater challenges than you growing up. So take 100% responsibility. Am I responsible for my parents' behavior? No. But does it serve me to blame them and stay in victim mode? No, because in that place, I can't do anything about it. So I take 100%, my marriage, the failure, when I screw up with my kids, anything that's happening, I take 100% responsibility, because from that place, I have the power to do something about it. If I feel like I'm a victim, even in this pandemic, right? There's so many things that are going on around us that we have no control over. But when we fall into fear, victim mode because of it, we lose our power.
Right.
And whatever's happening becomes the one in control.
But you said one thing about your biological father that I love, and I think it has, again, impact for so many people. You and Sean and I talk about this all the time as well. Your father made you feel seen, heard, validated, and
Yes.
the years subsequent to that, you weren't feeling that. And not to put words in your mouth, but I would assume that was also something that was continuing a pattern in your adult life as a wife and mother. Is that correct to assume?
Yes, it was. But again, as an adult, I take a lot of responsibility for that, because I wasn't showing up as a full version of myself. I had a lot of shame around my story. And so I wasn't seen or heard or validated by the people around me, because they didn't actually know me. All they saw was a version of me. They didn't know me. So of course, huge. How could they see or hear or validate me when they didn't even know all of me? They just got a version of me.
I would, we could probably spend a couple hours just on that subject alone. I mean, I think
that's a higher level of responsibility right there.
Unpacking that for sure, 100%. Like that's an onion to start to unpeel for anybody who's listening to this conversation. I think it's so powerful.
Yeah. But Brian, I do want to go back to Sean's question, because there are so many of us struggling with that. We have the desire to forgive our parents or to forgive our caretakers or others, and it's such a struggle, right? And so I do want to go back to that and say a couple of things, because I don't want people to think this was easy. I mean, I'm going on 50 now, and it is something that has been with me. And sometimes I've been able to forgive and stay in that place of forgiveness easier than at other times. And there were even just in recent years, actually around the time my daughter got married, there was a very challenging time where my stepfather was not invited to my daughter's wedding. So I don't want to paint this picture that it was easy. And no, it has been something that I've had to work on my entire life. To maintain that level of forgiveness for them. And it happens in layers. And so when you finally think you've healed and you are in that place of forgiveness and grace, something else will happen and it triggers those wounds, and you realize, oh, there's more healing, there's more forgiving to do. So I don't want to paint the picture like it's easy peasy to do. But again, if we're talking about our higher good, and then it's something that must be done in order to serve our higher being. And there are many people that are out there that maybe their parents don't even, or it could be someone else, they've become a victim of something atrocious, and the person who doesn't even necessarily deserve, we would think, well, they don't deserve my forgiveness for what they did. It's not about letting them off the hook.
Right.
It's about not letting it poison us. It's about doing the healing inside so that we can vibrate at our higher frequency, that we can show up in the world as the beautiful beings that we are.
That's
not about letting them off the hook.
That's very, very, very difficult. There's a saying that I once heard, which is that I use the term holding a grudge, but I think it's so much more to it than that. But it says that, I guess, anything that is the opposite of forgiveness is the equivalent of drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Oh my gosh.
But the other thing I was going to say, which especially, and this is not to get political, but politics is an example of it, because everything that we're about here is about unity versus division. And there's so many things that have been ingrained into us as a society that divide us, that it can be easy to often be blinded to the division itself. And the idea, we've thought that, we're almost been told that taking responsibility, personal responsibility, is something that is exclusive to one group of people from a political standpoint. So you think that that's what this group does. This is what this person does. But again, I just want to make sure that anybody within the sound of my voice is realizing, and Aimee's story and words are the best example of it, that these are human principles that serve any and everyone. And we like to say that, there is no such thing as special needs. Everyone has the same needs. Like Brian said, you want to be heard. You want to know that you matter. You want to know that you count. You'd like people to know that you were here because you contributed to the planet in some way. Not that you have to be famous, but that you just didn't take up space. Everybody has those needs. It's just that when you have a disability, whether it's a traumatic injury, a diagnosis, a weight issue, whatever the case might be, that you might need more of the same thing that everybody else needs. So the need itself is not special, but the quantity might be.
Yeah, for sure.
Or the way it's manifested, maybe.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on time, because there's so much more to the story. And we say this all the time, like we come to an end of an hour and we're like, oh my God, we're not there yet, folks. But I'm just saying, it's going to be upon us in a moment. But I want to, so you've gone through this personal transformation, and I want you to talk about what you've now done to take your experience, because I think this is the one thing that we have found consistently in the work that we're doing here on this podcast, which is just two dads having a conversation with people that we love and admire and respect and are, totally blown away by. The warriors who have taken the circumstance that they're in, they've made a personal transformation in their own life, or a decision in their own life, and then taken it out to the world and now made an impact on the community. So as you've gone through this journey, inspired by the folks like Ed Milet and Jeff Levitan and others, you made a decision to then take your experience and go out and share that with the world. Can you talk about that piece of it, so we can? I want people to understand where you're doing with that.
Absolutely. And so it really goes back to figuring out what my purpose was, right? So I set off on this weight loss, what I thought was just a weight loss journey in 2018. I figured out, okay, if I'm going to try to even have the capacity to have the energy to figure out what my purpose is and then go create it, I've got to heal myself physically. I did not understand the mind, body, spirit connection. So I'm just focusing on, like, I got to lose weight. I got to have energy. I got to get my blood sugar levels under control, right? All of that. So I set off, like I said, what I thought was just a weight loss journey. I didn't even know how I was going to do it. I originally said, okay, a pound a week. So 52 pounds in a year. That was going to be the goal. But then again, from all the personal development, it's like, no, set a goal that stretches you, that makes you a little uncomfortable. So I'm like, well, I don't know. I've never lost like a pound a week consistently for 52 weeks, but all right. So I'll set it to 70 pounds. Okay. That scares the shit out of me, but all right, there you go. That's the goal. The only thing I knew I didn't want to do is I didn't want to diet. I didn't want to count calories. I didn't want to count carbs. I didn't want to restrict. I was like, I got to learn how to just be healthy and live this way the rest of my life. I don't want to be on a diet the rest of my life. I don't want to be like my mom, right? That's all I knew. And But I went all in on January 6th of that year when I was at my doctor's office and she said, "You are showing signs of insulin resistance." And in that moment, I'm like, hell no. Because I had a unique experience. My father, my biological father, had been married previous to my mom, and he was much older. So he had a daughter, my half sister, who's only 5 years younger than my mom. So I had these two women who were in their 70s, and they both had made very different choices in their life, and now in their mid 70s had dramatically different lives. One was completely incapacitated in a wheelchair, dependent on someone to even just go to the bathroom or take a shower. And the other one was still running. They had just competed in the Senior Olympics in Texas and running 5 miles a day.
Wow.
And so when I heard the doctor say that, I immediately, boom, which path do you want? You want to end up in a wheelchair, completely incapacitated, can't see your grandchildren? And then now it's like even more, right? Confined into a convalescent home and can't even see your family, right? Or do you want freedom and quality of life? And so I chose that path. And so I won the weight loss game that actually turned into a mind-body experience in that moment. January 6, 2018, I won because I went all in. So no matter what your viewers are wanting to accomplish, that any sort of transformation, whether it's a health, fitness or whatever, when you go all in, that's where you get the results. Most people won't go all in. They don't get the results. And so they're constantly looking for something else to fix them, a different program, a different diet, a different blah, 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 blah. That's not it. If you would just choose one thing and go all in, you would get the results. But people don't know how to go all in. But thank God I had a mom and a sister who were just a few years apart, dramatically different end results. And so I chose the one that that's what I want. I want to still be able to travel. I still want to be walking. I still want to, see my grandchildren, enjoy, my elderly years. So that was that. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was all in. And in that, with that level of commitment, also what happens is the universe pays attention. The analogy I use, I'll give you real quick. We all have kids. When your kid comes to you and says, "Mom, I want this new video game," that's the new Mario Brothers game, right? It's coming up and everybody, all my friends have it. I want it. Can you get it for me? But your kid, they're not really into it. It's going to be this week Mario Brothers, next week Super Smash Brothers, right? And the Mario Brothers game is going to, and I understand everything's digital now, but just stay with me, right? Imagine when you actually buy the cartridge, right? It's going to end up on the floor. You're going to step on it in the middle of the night. It's going to hurt your foot. You're going to curse. And 2 weeks later, it's going to be in the donation bin to Goodwill. But they come to you, "Mom, I've been doing all this research on the new Mario Brothers game. It does this, this, and this. It costs $49.99. What can I do to earn money to buy that game?" You're going to get all in and support your kid to manifest that desire because you can see he's all in. The universe is the same way. You show up one day, "Oh, I want to lose 90 pounds this year," as you're like eating the Oreos dunked in milk. And no shame in Oreos and milk. I'm just giving you guys an example. And that's very different than like, you know what? I'm done. I do not want to be in a wheelchair, completely dependent on someone when I'm 75. I am all in. I will do this or I will die trying. Then the universe is like, shit, she's serious. I'm going to help her. And that's what happened. From that day forth, doors opened, information came to me. I discovered how to lose weight without dieting. And what happened in the process of that weight loss journey is it became a total mind-body transformation. And I discovered my purpose, or my purpose found me. Which is to inspire women to heal their relationship with food, their bodies, and their minds, and show up in the world to be the beautiful people they are and fulfill their contract with the universe.
So would you say then that the struggle that most people have, regardless of special needs, neurotypical, weight, rich, poor, whatever the case is, that part of the human experience and challenge is that people usually have a lack of congruency between their actions and their desires?
100%. Most people think they want, like in the beginning, I had no problem attracting clients. I told my story. Everyone's like, I want what she's got,
Right.
right? I want to lose 90 pounds in a year without dieting.
Sure.
But as soon as we started working together and they got a taste of the work that was involved, it was like, oh, yeah, I don't think I really want that.
And they probably didn't even come right out and say that. They probably told you something else too.
Well, of course, because on a conscious level, they aren't even aware of that. They've got it's all about the subconscious. It's all the beliefs that we have about ourselves in the subconscious that we keep manifesting into our reality. So they're not experiencing it on a conscious level, but what it's looking like is, oh, you know what? I forgot I've got a PTA commitment now for the next 6 weeks. That's going to take all my time. I'm going to have to take a pause on the coaching with you. Or, oh, my husband, he's about to lay off. Money is tight. I don't think I can afford to keep working with you. Or, right?
I want to take a cue from what you just said, because here's what I got out of it, and which is going to be one of the greatest pieces of value that I get out of you being here today, which I hope everyone else gets, is going back to what you said earlier about accepting where people are and not in judgment. And it takes work, because Brian and I talk all the time. Like I said, I'm this person that tries to be conscious. I think I'm more conscious with intention than most people. But as much as that happens, my consciousness is at a point where I catch myself. And what you just reminded me there is, when someone says they want one thing, but they're doing something else, it can confound you. It can frustrate you, especially if you appear to want their success more than they do. But we have to do everything we can to make sure that we're not holding them in judgment, because we're the sum total of our own experiences. And as much as you know that, you forget that. And you're just like, I don't get it. Why don't you want to do? Or we have the argument with ourselves. I don't understand that person. Why so? That's who they are, and that's where they are. So thank you for that.
And we always say that some people are interested and others are committed, right? So people are interested in losing 90 pounds in a year, but the commitment is a completely different level of.
By the same token, when somebody actually tells you, when someone doesn't give the story to themselves or you, and they just said, something, I don't know if I want to give up my Saturday afternoons and miss college football, man. You know what? You do A, you get B, and I'm not going to judge you for that. Matter of fact, I commend you for coming right out and saying that. Most people couldn't do that. When and if that changes, let me know.
I want to talk. Thank you for that. I want to talk about that judgment piece with you for a second. Two things. When we are at a place of peace and surrender internally, which means we're not judging ourselves, it's much easier to then offer that gift to others.
Right.
So when we find ourselves in judgment about other people, what that really is we're in judgment about ourselves.
Right.
We're not okay with ourselves. When we get to that point, and it doesn't mean that we have to hit any certain level of perfection or nirvana. It's just when we own our whole story, the dark and the light, and be in a place of acceptance and surrender to it, then we're able to give that gift to others. Number one. Number two, when we as the coach or the healer or the guide working with people, and I do find myself in this place often, and so I'm speaking from personal experience, but I know that my story is not, and experience is not unique. When we want something more for someone than they themselves want it, it's usually because we're seeking our own validation in their performance. So we need our ego to be fed by the results that they're getting. Right.
And that again, go ahead.
Well, so again, it's not about us. It's about sharing our gifts with the world and allowing other people to choose how to receive them.
That again is why there's so much value in the subconscious, because I don't know anybody that in the moment that even stops and thinks, yeah, I need them to succeed, because how will that make me look? Nobody's thinking that. You're thinking, look, this person just doesn't want it. I know they could be great at it, whether they could be great at this business, they could be great at whatever it is I'm trying to coach them in, they could succeed. Nobody's consciously thinking, I need that for me. But that is so profound that you say that. And like everything else that has the most value, it's so simple and sneaky. If you blink, you miss it.
So 90% of the work I do with people is about identifying what's happening at a subconscious level that is essentially self-sabotaging.
So Aimee, tell us, specifically what work you're doing, what's leading you to Bali, and, as we're kind of, again, getting close to the end of our hour, we have a little bit of
where
time.
they can find you too.
Well, I have that I have, but talk about
good.
that.
I have a website. I will be honest. It's the best way to connect would be our Facebook group. We have a very active Facebook community. It's Intuitive Health with Aimee and Ron. Come and join that. That's where every day there's content being posted. Once a week, we do a Facebook Live where we talk about health and wellness related topics. And that's where we talk about all of our programs and things that are upcoming. So, essentially, there's a few different things that we do. One-on-one coaching. We have programs. We have online programs to teach intuitive eating. We have 30-day challenges that we do online. I teach workshops. I'm just teaching a 4-week workshop right now on self-love. Last month, it was a 4-week workshop on emotional eating. And now what I'm really moving into is just doing individual readings for people. So I'm kind of at a place where I don't have a lot of time to take on clients, coaching clients. I'm getting pretty full that way. So it means I have to be very selective on the clients I take on. But what I do have time for is to just sit down and have an hour-long session where I do a reading, help them identify whatever it is that they're looking for, and then they can, go and do with it what they will until the next time they're ready for another session. And it's expanding beyond the weight loss, health and fitness conversation. Now it's really about, like I'm working with a woman that has money blocks right now, and helping her identify and heal from that so she can manifest some of the things that she would like to manifest financially. So I'm in Bali because we originally met my business partner. I have an amazing, gifted business partner, Ron White. He came up with the phrase early on when we started working together last year. Aimee heals from the inside out, and I heal from the outside in. So as I'm able to read your emotional and spiritual state and help you identify your challenges that way, he can read your body. And by looking at your body, he can see where your imbalances are, where your pains are. And then he can do an analysis and put a program together for you to help heal that way. So that's why we're a complete program. We work together. He's in Jakarta. We talked about wanting to do retreats for our clients. So we met last November here in Bali to explore venues. And what happened was this really amazing, magical 3 weeks where we were just making connections with people on so many levels that have opened up so many business opportunities for us that we didn't even imagine back in November. So essentially, I went home to have the holidays with my kids, and we have a wellness center here in Ubud that we're going to be working with, just tons of things. We've got a VR idea that we're working on getting a prototype developed. There's just lots, and it all seems to be centered here in Bali. So I'm back now, finally. The borders were closed, but I arrived back here around the 15th of February, and here to just, see where this magical journey takes me.
It's amazing. So obviously physical health, financial health, other categories, relationship health. I'm assuming like you basically can work on so many different categories for folks. Yeah.
Yes. So my gift, and I'll just share this with you as we wrap up. I have been an intuitive. And for your viewers that don't understand that, I'm able to channel people's energy and share things with them about themselves. For instance, I'll just give you, this is like one of the most beautiful moments of my week, maybe my month, and definitely it's going to be of my life. Ron and I are a part of a group meditation that we get together every day. On Zoom. 2 days ago, a woman who has just recently joined us, so I don't know her well at all. I've only seen her once or twice. She's I would say in her mid-70s. She joined us that day, and she was sharing how she really needed to be there in the meditation with us today because her husband, who has cancer, just was hospitalized. His oxygen levels were questionable, and he was in the hospital, and she couldn't go see him. I felt her sadness. I felt her complete despondency over it. This is a 75-year-old woman-ish who's been married for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, taking care of her husband. And now her husband's in the hospital and she can't go see him. She can't be there to care for him. She can't be there to sit by his side. And for her, she was trying to like have a stiff upper chin about it, but I could feel on an energetic level and my heart just broke for her. So through the meditation, I connected with her energy and I saw some things that, because I wanted to like, what can I do to support her? What can I do to, something comfort her? And after the meditation, I asked her if I could share. I don't ever read someone without their permission. And she said yes. And I told her, I said, I know that you feel, and these are not things she communicated to us. She showed up and just said, I'm just here because my husband's in the hospital. I can't go see him. And I just really need this today. So she didn't share beyond that. But what became clear to me in meditation was that she was in this complete state of just sadness and despondency. And so I told, and isolation. So I told her, I said, I know you feel tremendously alone right now and unsupported because you can't be with people physically. But I want you to know that you are surrounded by angels and guides right now that are holding you up and energetically supporting you. And she just started crying.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, and I want you to know that your husband will be home sooner than you think. And she thought like I was just kind of, it's like a platitude. And I'm like, no, I want you to understand. I said, you can trust me on this. Your husband will be home sooner than you think. And she was like, thank you, thank you. The next day, which was yesterday, I wasn't on there because I had a 2 a.m. speaking engagement. And so I was too tired, but Ron messaged me and he said, Marsha wanted to tell you, thank you so much. Your words meant everything to her. And she got a call from the hospital. Her husband's not as sick as they originally thought, and he'll be home soon.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's why I do what I do.
Wow.
We do. And so I made a commitment to the universe back in November in a water purification temple here in Bali, a Hindu temple, that I would dedicate and share my gifts with everyone that I came across, knowing in return I would be taken care of. And that's what I do. So the conversation has gone beyond weight loss and physical fitness. And it's really, I actually was giving some business. I've met a man down the street from Australia. He's got a coffee shop and it's struggling because of the borders being closed. And I said to him, I'm like, I've never given business advice, but I see something that is going to help you if you'll listen to me. And he was like, yeah, I'm all ears. So
wow.
Apparently I can even read your
So there's several things to be said here, which is, as we wrap up, one is be open enough to find out what your purpose is.
Yes. No. It starts with believe. Believe you have a purpose beyond just taking up space and oxygen on this planet.
Right. And then raise your consciousness to find out, to be willing to have it come to you as to what that is. And once you find it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, because I don't consider this an area that I specialize in, though I think I'm aware more so than most. But I would imagine that when most people find out what it is, they won't just discover something that wasn't there all along. They will discover it and equally find out that it has been there all along and be like, gosh, now that I think about it, I knew it was there all the time.
Yes. That's what it is. You don't have to go discover yourself. You don't have to go discover your purpose. It always there. All you're doing is reconnecting with it.
Right.
It's always been there. This intuitive gift, I've always had it. But the religion that I was taught, that I grew up in, I was taught that it was a gift that I had to rely on a male spirit to give me. And I had to live my life according to what they said in order to qualify for it. So I've always had this knowingness. I didn't understand it because of what I was taught. So I had to unlearn all of that and understand that gift actually comes from within. And the only qualification is the more I share it, the greater the gifts become.
And then that is why we sit in silence to get our answers, regardless of what you call your religion or anything. Great. So before we wrap up, I have to ask you this question, which we close out with all the time, which is, give us one example, if you can, of a belief that you held dearly to, and I mean would like protect it with all your being, that you now feel otherwise about.
A belief that I used to hold dearly that I would protect. that there's a heaven and hell, and that you have to rely on someone other than yourself to make it to heaven.
That's what you used to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you believe now?
I believe that we create our own reality. I believe that when you talked about, I'm a conscious person, I'm a dad, no, those are all labels that we use to identify what we are. We're spiritual beings of infinite love. We've always existed, will always exist. And we don't have to rely on any entity or person or organization outside of ourselves to qualify for heaven, however you identify heaven. And I don't think you have to wait to get to heaven. You can create your heaven right now, right here.
And you have done that. Amazing conversation. And again, I'm looking at the time like, oh my God, there's so much more that we want to talk to you about. And Aimee, I know for our audience, wherever they're seeing this or listening to this, this has been, as I anticipated, a transformational conversation that I think extends, through and outside of our special needs community. That really has an impact for so many people on so many communities. So I thank you. I love you. I love being in your space. I miss your energy, and man, I'm just so in love with the work that you're doing in the world. It really is. It's an incredible thing, an honor for us to have you on the show, and I hope that we get to kind of follow progress with you as well as you go through this journey. And as we sign off, I'll just say, this is a time that empathy and love above everything. Is if we can take a position when in our conversations and our interactions with the people in our lives, express as much empathy and love as you possibly can. That's what people are looking for. And the more that we share that, the more we change our world for the better. So I want to thank all of our listeners. My daughter Jordan was on the was watching today, and Robert and all the folks who join us on a regular basis. Thank you so much for your participation. Joe put one thing up here on the screen. I'll show you really fast. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. That is you, Aimee Ibarra. So thank you again for being on the show. Sean, if you want to sign us off, please do.
I will do that very quickly. For everyone listening, thank you so very much. As our audience continues to grow, you can find us on our YouTube channel, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Pandora, Amazon, and others as well. And we thank you, our listeners in the Virgin Islands. Thank you so very much. And I want to thank the women in my life for whom I would not be here without, literally my mom and my amazing wife, Laura. And remember, again, somebody needs to know that they matter. Somebody needs to know that they care. And as you're listening, know that both apply to you, because you do matter and we care. Thank you so very much.
Love you all. Thank you.